entitled parents, my mechanic sister scammed me $8,000 until I exposed her lies. Hashtag I finally realized my sister was stealing from me. The invoice sat on my kitchen counter, and something about it made my stomach twist in a way I couldn't quite explain. $1,200 to replace my serpentine belt. I stared at the itemized receipt from my sister's auto shop, Martinez Auto Repair, trying to make sense of the numbers. A serpentine belt. I didn't even know what that was supposed to cost, but the number seemed astronomical. When I called her that morning complaining about a squealing noise under my hood, she'd assured me it was a simple fix, probably just the belt. She'd promised me a family discount. We're close like that, or at least I thought we were. My name is Derek, and I'm 28 years old. I work in an office as a project coordinator, nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills. My sister, Catherine, is 32 and has been running her auto shop for the past 6 years. She's the entrepreneurial one in the family, the one who went to trade school while I got my business degree. Growing up, she was my protector, my confidant, the person who'd drive across town at midnight if I needed her. Or so I believed. This was the 5th major repair in 2 years. I didn't realize it was a pattern until I finally decided to organize all my receipts. I'd been keeping them in a shoebox under my bed, a habit from my accountant father who instilled in me the importance of records, even though I'm terrible about following through on actual financial management. But something had shifted in me lately. Money was getting tighter. My salary had been stagnant for 2 years, and I couldn't figure out where it was all going. So I pulled out the box and spread everything across my dining room table like pieces of a puzzle I was determined to solve. May 2022, transmission fluid flush and filter replacement, $890. September 2022, brake pad replacement and rotor resurfacing, $1,150. February 2023, alternator replacement, $1,400. June 2023, complete cooling system flush, $975. August 2023, serpentine belt replacement, $1,200. The numbers blurred together. Nearly $8,000 over 2 years. My 2015 Honda Accord wasn't exactly a luxury vehicle, it wasn't that old, and it rarely gave me serious trouble. How was I spending $8 grand on repairs? My hands shook as I did something I should have done months ago. I googled the actual costs of these repairs. An hour later, I felt physically ill. A serpentine belt shouldn't cost more than $150 to $200 in parts, plus maybe $100 to $150 in labor depending on the mechanic. Transmission fluid flushes run about $150. Brake pads. $300 at the absolute most, not $1,150. I wasn't a mechanic, not even close, but I had enough sense to understand that Catherine had been systematically fleecing me. My sister had been stealing from me. The realization hit different because it wasn't coming from some stranger at a shop I didn't trust. This was Catherine. Catherine who braided my hair before my first day of middle school. Catherine who loaned me her car when mine broke down in 2019 without a single complaint. Catherine who showed up at my apartment with ice cream and a terrible movie when my girlfriend left me 3 years ago. I needed to talk to her. There had to be an explanation. Maybe there were additional services I didn't understand. Maybe the 2023 repairs were more complicated than I realized. Maybe I was overreacting. I called her that evening. Hey, Derek. What's up? Her voice was bright, normal, sisterly. I wanted to ask you about some of the repair costs from my car, I started carefully. I've been looking at the invoices, and I'm just trying to understand the pricing on a few of them. There was a pause. What do you mean? Her tone had shifted slightly, become more defensive. Well, the serpentine belt. I looked it up, and it seems like that should have been a lot cheaper than $1,200. I heard her exhale sharply. Derek, you don't understand how car repairs work. There's diagnostic time, there's labor, there's the quality of parts one use. You think you can just Google something and suddenly you're an expert. The condescension stung worse than the money. I'm not saying I'm an expert, I said, keeping my voice level. I'm just asking for clarification. If I owe you that much money, I'd like to understand why. You're being insulting, Catherine snapped. I've always taken care of you. I've always given you a family discount, and this is how you repay me. By questioning my integrity and my pricing. I'm not questioning your integrity, You're too stupid to understand automotive repair costs, Derek. You always have been. Maybe just be grateful someone in this family actually has a real skill and knows how to run a business. Those words hit different because they came from someone who was supposed to have my back. I didn't respond. There wasn't much to say after that. We ended the call shortly after, and I sat there in my apartment feeling something I'd never felt toward Catherine before, betrayal mixed with rage. She hadn't denied any of the charges. She hadn't offered a single reasonable explanation. Instead, she'd insulted my intelligence and deflected by making me feel guilty for even asking questions. That's when I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't confusion about pricing. This was calculated. This was someone who knew exactly what they were doing and had deliberately targeted someone they knew wouldn't question them. Someone they loved. I opened my laptop and created a new folder on my desktop. I labeled it Evidence. I was done being the stupid little brother who just accepted whatever his big sister told him. I was done being taken advantage of. And I was done letting this go. It was time to find out exactly what Catherine had charged me for, and it was time to make sure she answered for every single penny. Hashtag the deeper I dug, the worse it got. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't focus on spreadsheets and project timelines when my entire sense of reality was tilting sideways. My boss didn't question it. I'd been a reliable employee for 4 years and rarely took unplanned time off. I had one day to myself to figure out what I was dealing with. I started methodically going through each invoice Catherine had given me, photographing them with my phone and creating a detailed spreadsheet. The invoice format was consistent: her shop's letterhead, date, description of work, parts cost, labor cost, total. To anyone glancing at them, they looked legitimate. Professional. Trustworthy. But they were lies written on official paper. I decided to visit a different auto shop, one across town where nobody would know me or my sister. I chose a place called Frank's Automotive that had good reviews and had been in business for 15 years. Frank himself was an older guy in his 60s, grease permanently embedded under his fingernails, the kind of person who looked like he'd actually worked on cars his entire life. I walked in with my phone, showing him photos of the invoices. I'm trying to understand if these costs are reasonable, I explained, not mentioning that my sister was the one who charged me. I'm getting a second opinion on some repair work I had done. Frank adjusted his reading glasses and scrolled through the images I'd pulled up. His expression shifted with each one. First neutral. Then confused. Then something that looked like anger. Where did you take your car? He asked, his voice careful. A shop in the area, I said vaguely. He handed back my phone. Friend, whoever did this work either completely overcharged you, or they didn't do half the work they claimed to do. He pointed to the transmission fluid flush. This right here. Shouldn't cost more than $150, maybe $200 depending on the vehicle and if there's complications. $150 in labor, tops. You paid almost $900. My stomach dropped. I'd hoped, stupidly, that maybe I was wrong. Maybe my Google searches had been inaccurate. Maybe there was context I didn't understand. What about the brake work? I asked quietly. Frank shook his head. Brake pads and rotor resurfacing on a Honda Accord. You're looking at $400, absolute maximum. And that's if they're doing premium work. This invoice says $1,100. He continued methodically going through each one, confirming my worst fears. The alternator was overpriced by half. The cooling system flush was nearly 4 times what it should have been. The serpentine belt cost was so inflated it bordered on absurd. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, Frank said, removing his glasses. But you've been taken advantage of. Either this shop is the most expensive place in the state, or someone's stealing from you. I drove home in a daze. That evening, I did something I probably should have done before calling Catherine. I went through my bank records, pulling up every payment I'd made to Martinez Auto Repair over the past 2 years. I created another spreadsheet documenting everything, dates, amounts, what the invoice claimed versus what Frank said the actual cost should have been. The total discrepancy was staggering. Of the $7,815 I'd spent, approximately $5,200 appeared to be fraudulent charges. She'd been taking more than 2/3 of each payment. I felt sick. Physically ill in a way that no amount of water or fresh air could fix. But I needed to be smart about this. I couldn't just confront her again without evidence that would hold up. I needed to understand exactly what she'd done and how to prove it. I spent the next week researching my options, falling down internet rabbit holes about consumer protection, small claims court, and filing complaints with the Better Business Bureau. I discovered that I could request an independent inspection of my vehicle. That I could get a report from another certified mechanic documenting which of these repairs were actually necessary or properly performed. That I could file complaints with the State Automotive Licensing Board. That, depending on how this was handled, this could constitute fraud. The anger was building. It had started as hurt, then shifted to betrayal, but now it was crystallizing into something cold and focused. This wasn't just my sister overcharging me. This was premeditated. This was someone who knew exactly what they were doing and had deliberately targeted a family member. I thought about all the times I recommended her shop to friends. My sister runs it, I'd said proudly. She takes great care of me. How many other people had she done this to? How many other trusting customers had she defrauded with the same confidence that came from knowing they wouldn't question her? On Thursday evening, my phone rang. It was my mom. Derek, Catherine says you've been asking her questions about repair costs. She's very upset. She said you implied she was overcharging you. I closed my eyes. Of course Catherine had gone to Mom first. Strategic move. Get ahead of the narrative. Mom, I need to talk to you about something, I said carefully. I've discovered that Catherine has been significantly overcharging me for repairs. I had another mechanic look at the invoices, and she's confirmed that I've been charged roughly $5,000 more than the actual cost of the work. There was silence on the other end. That's a serious accusation, Derek. I know it is, I said. I have documentation. Invoices. Bank records. I've had another certified mechanic review everything. This isn't an accusation based on feelings, it's based on facts. Maybe you misunderstood the invoicing, my mom said, and I could hear the desperation in her voice to make this not be true. Catherine wouldn't do something like that. To you, especially. She loves you. Mom, I love her too. Which is why this hurts so much. But I have evidence. Real evidence. I don't want to hear this, she said quietly. Derek, if you pursue this, you're going to destroy this family. Catherine's business is everything to her. Is that what you want? The question hung there like a weight. What I want, I said slowly, is for Catherine to take responsibility for what she's done and to pay me back what she stole. She didn't steal from you. You're being dramatic. I realized in that moment that I was completely alone in this. Catherine had already positioned herself as the victim, and my parents, who loved both of us, were going to choose the narrative that required the least disruption to the family. That was fine. I had documentation. I had evidence. I had Frank's assessment in my own research. And I was no longer going to be dismissed as too stupid to understand. I was going to burn this to the ground. Hashtag the evidence mounts, and so does the pressure. I hung up with my mom feeling hollowed out. Family was supposed to be the one thing you could count on, but I was learning that principle applied only when it was convenient. When it didn't threaten someone's livelihood or reputation, that principle evaporated like water on hot asphalt. Over the next 3 days, I meticulously documented everything. I wasn't going to give Catherine, or my parents, any opportunity to claim I'd misunderstood or miscalculated. Every invoice got photographed in high resolution. Every bank statement got printed and highlighted. Every conversation with Frank at the automotive shop got followed up with a formal written assessment that I paid him $50 for, just to have something official and notarized. The document Frank provided was damning. Line by line, he went through each repair Catherine had charged me for and provided what he considered the fair market value for that work in our region. The discrepancies weren't minor calculation errors or differences in pricing philosophy. They were systematic overcharges that suggested either gross incompetence or intentional fraud. Given that Catherine had been running her shop for 6 years and had decent online reviews, I knew which option was more likely. I also discovered something else while digging through old text messages. Catherine had been oddly specific about certain repairs. When my check engine light came on 18 months ago, she'd immediately insisted I needed a new oxygen sensor and a catalytic converter replacement. The total was $1,840. But in my research, I learned that oxygen sensors typically cost between $300 and $600 installed, and catalytic converters ranged from $400 to $900. She'd charged me double the high end on both. Then there was the transmission flush she'd insisted was absolutely critical for my vehicle's longevity. That $890 charge had always bothered me. It seemed excessive even before I knew what it should have cost. Frank had looked at that invoice and actually laughed. She charged you almost $900 for a basic transmission fluid change. That's not a flush, that's highway robbery. I started researching the regulatory bodies in our state. The State Automotive Licensing Board had a website with complaint procedures. There was also the Better Business Bureau, which maintained records of complaints and resolutions. I even discovered that there was a Consumer Protection Division within the State Attorney General's office that handled fraud cases. But before I went nuclear, I decided to take one more step. I needed to actually get my vehicle inspected by another shop to verify whether the work Catherine had billed me for was even done. That was the final piece of the puzzle. I called Frank's Automotive and explained the situation more fully this time. I told him about Catherine, about the family dynamics, about everything. He listened without interrupting and then said something that stuck with me. Look, I see this more often than you'd think. Family members with businesses, thinking they can bend the rules because there's a relationship there. It never ends well. He offered to do a detailed inspection of my 2015 Honda Accord, checking to verify which of the repairs Catherine had billed me for actually appeared to have been completed. We scheduled it for Saturday morning. That Friday night, I got a text from Catherine. Mom told me you're spreading lies about my business. I don't appreciate this. Call me so we can talk about this like adults. I stared at the message for 10 minutes. My first instinct was to respond immediately, to defend myself, to explain everything I discovered. But I forced myself to wait. Emotion was a luxury I couldn't afford right now. I texted back, I'd prefer to discuss this once I have all my facts in order. I'll be in touch. I knew how that would land. Cold. Businesslike. Evidence that I wasn't backing down. She probably expected me to explode or to come running to her for an explanation. Instead, I was treating this like what it was, a transaction dispute between two parties. She didn't respond. Saturday morning came with a cold October drizzle. I dropped my car at Frank's Automotive at 8 a.m. and sat in his waiting room, drinking terrible coffee from a gas station across the street while he worked. It took 3 hours. When he came out, he was shaking his head. I've got good news and bad news, he said, gesturing for me to follow him to the service bay. He'd pulled my will to show me the brake pads and rotors. The brake work your sister charged you for. It doesn't look like it was actually done. Or if it was done extremely poorly, because your rotors are still warped and your pads are nearly worn through. My heart was pounding. What do you mean, doesn't look like it was done? I mean the work quality doesn't match someone who actually cared about doing the job right. See these rotors? If they'd been resurfaced like the invoice claims, they'd have machine marks. These look original to me. And the brake fluid, I tested it. It's dirty. If she'd done a brake fluid flush like she charged you for, it would be clean. He pulled up his diagnostic report on his tablet. The alternator, though, that one actually looks like it was replaced. But here's the thing, the one she installed is a refurbished unit. Not new. You paid for new. We went through the rest of the vehicle. The transmission fluid didn't appear to have been flushed at all, it was still dark and hadn't been changed in years. The serpentine belt looked original. The cooling system showed no signs of having been serviced. So she charged me for work that wasn't done, I said numbly. At least half of these repairs, yeah, Frank confirmed. And the alternator she installed was substandard compared to what you paid for. He printed out a detailed inspection report for me, documenting everything with photographs. This was it. This was the evidence I needed that made this not just overpricing, this was fraud. She'd billed me for services she never performed. My phone buzzed. Another text from Catherine, Derek, seriously. We need to talk. You're being unreasonable. I turned off my phone. Hashtag the calm before everything explodes. I didn't turn my phone back on until Sunday evening. By then, I had 17 missed calls, 23 text messages, and 2 voicemails. Most were from Catherine. 3 calls and 4 texts were from my mom. 1 call was from my dad, which was unusual enough to make my stomach tighten. I listened to my dad's voicemail first. His voice was strained, tired in a way I'd rarely heard. Derek, call me back. Your mother is upset. Catherine is upset. I don't know what's going on, but whatever this is, we need to talk about it as a family before you do anything rash. Call me. Rash. Like documenting systematic fraud was something I decided to do on a whim. Catherine's messages escalated in tone. The first few were placating. Asterisk, Derek, I don't know what Frank told you, but he's probably just trying to upsell you on his own services. Asterisk. Asterisk, you know how competitive the auto repair industry is. Everyone tries to make others look bad. Asterisk. Asterisk, can we please just talk? I miss my brother. Asterisk. By the 10th message, the mask was slipping. Asterisk, you're going to regret this. I'm telling you right now, you go after me, and this family is done. MOM is done. Dad will have to choose. Asterisk. Asterisk, I've been nothing but generous with you. And this is how you repay me. By believing some random mechanic over your own sister. Asterisk. The last one, sent at 11:47 p.m. Saturday night, was different. Asterisk, Frank's Automotive. Really, Derek? That place is a dump. Everyone knows he's a scammer. But sure, believe him over me. I hope whatever you're planning is worth destroying our family. Asterisk. I read through Frank's inspection report again. The photographs were clear, damning, and professional. He documented everything: the original brake rotors with their distinctive wear patterns, the dark transmission fluid, the refurbished alternator that didn't match the invoice description. He'd even included market rate comparisons showing what each service should have cost in our region. This was real. This was proof. But I felt something I hadn't anticipated: doubt. Not about whether Catherine had defrauded me. The evidence was too solid for that. But doubt about what came next. Because Catherine was right about one thing: if I went through with this, if I filed complaints with the licensing board and the BBB, if I pursued this through consumer protection channels, it wouldn't just damage Catherine. It would blow up my family. My mom would stop talking to me. She'd made that clear. My dad would be put in an impossible position between his wife and his son. My relationship with Catherine would be permanently severed. And for what? $8,000 that I'd never get back anyway. The satisfaction of being right. Of proving I wasn't too stupid to understand. I sat with that thought for a long time, staring at Frank's report. Monday morning, I called in sick to work. I needed to think clearly, and I couldn't do that in an office surrounded by people and fluorescent lights and the pressure to pretend everything was normal. I made a list of options. 1. Let it go. Chalk it up to learning a hard lesson about trusting family. 2. Demand repayment directly from Catherine, threatening legal action if she refused. 3. File complaints with regulatory agencies and pursue this formally. 4. Hire a lawyer and sue her civilly. Each option had consequences I had to weigh. Option 1 meant accepting that I'd been stolen from and doing nothing about it. That my sister could continue this behavior with other customers, or other family members. That felt like cowardice. Option 2 would put Catherine on notice but also give her the opportunity to gaslight me again, to claim I was misunderstanding things, to position herself as the victim of my accusations. Option 3 was the nuclear option. It would be effective, but it would destroy my family relationships. Option 4 was expensive, time-consuming, and uncertain. I'd need a lawyer willing to take a case against a family member, and I'd need to have the emotional bandwidth to relive all of this in depositions and potentially court. The thing was, I kept coming back to something Frank had said: I see this more often than you'd think. Catherine wasn't the only mechanic doing this. She wouldn't be the last. And if she got away with it, if I let her get away with it because I was afraid of family fallout, then she'd keep doing it. Not just to me, but to other people who trusted her. Tuesday morning, I called my dad. Not my mom. Not yet. I need to meet with you and Mom, I said. Without Catherine. This weekend, if possible. Derek. I'm not going to argue about this, I interrupted. And I'm not going to let this go. I need you to understand that. But I want to try to have this conversation with you both before I take any further steps. There was a long pause. What further steps? I'll explain everything this weekend. Just, please make sure it happens. He agreed, though I could hear the dread in his voice. That Friday night, Catherine called me directly. Not a text. A call. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Don't do this, she said immediately, no preamble, no greeting. Whatever you're planning, don't do it. I'm not planning anything yet, I said. I'm having a conversation with Mom and Dad this weekend. A conversation about destroying my business, you mean? Her voice cracked slightly. Derek, I made a mistake. Maybe I overcharged you. But you're talking about ruining me over this. Over money. You're going to go to the licensing board. The BBB. Do you know what that would do? Yes, I said. I know exactly what it would do. Then how can you even consider it? I'm your sister. We grew up together. Mom would be devastated. Dad would be devastated. They should be devastated, I said quietly. That you did this. Not that I'm holding you accountable for it. You don't understand, she said, and there was something almost pleading in her voice now. The shop is struggling. It's been struggling for 2 years. I needed. You needed to commit fraud. I said. You needed to steal from your own family. I didn't steal. You charged me for work you didn't perform. Frank's report is very clear on that. The line went quiet except for her breathing. If you file complaints, she said, each word careful and deliberate, I will tell Mom and Dad that you've been stealing from your job. That I've known about it for months and covered for you. My blood went cold. I'm not, I said. But I can make them believe you are, she continued. I can create documentation. I can be very convincing. And they might not believe you when you deny it, because you're going to look like you're lashing out. Like you're trying to destroy me to cover your own crimes. It was such a perfectly executed threat that I almost had to admire it. You're going to lie to our parents to protect yourself, I said. I'm going to do what I need to do to survive, she said. And I suggest you think very carefully about whether this is really worth it. She hung up. I sat in the darkness of my apartment, holding my phone, feeling like I just looked into an abyss that looked back at me. #Chunk5. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch until 3 a.m., replaying Catherine's threat over and over in my head. The casual cruelty of it. The calculation. She wasn't denying anything anymore, she was threatening to fabricate evidence against me to save herself. My first instinct was to panic. I work in accounting. My records are meticulous. I know exactly what I've taken from the office and what I haven't, which is nothing. But Catherine was right about one thing: the appearance of wrongdoing, once planted in my parents' minds, would be hard to shake. She's charming. She's always been charming. And I'd just proven I was willing to turn on her, as she'd undoubtedly frame it. By 4 a.m., I'd moved past panic into a different kind of clarity. If she was willing to threaten me, if she was willing to lie about me to our parents, then I was no longer dealing with someone who'd made a mistake. I was dealing with someone willing to do whatever it took to protect herself. And that changed the calculation. I texted Frank Friday morning, *, can we talk? I need advice on something, *. He called me within an hour. I explained Catherine's threat without going into all the emotional details, just the facts. He was quiet for a moment. That's blackmail, he said finally. Or extortion, technically. Making threats to prevent you from reporting her to authorities. I know, I said. But how do I prove it? You have your phone. Call logs, right? Your carrier has records of the time and duration of the call. She could claim we were just discussing things. That she was worried about the business. Maybe, Frank said. But combined with everything else, it strengthens your position. Shows consciousness of guilt. Shows she knew what she did was wrong and was willing to threaten you to keep it quiet. I hadn't thought about it that way. I'd been so focused on the threat that I hadn't considered it as evidence. There's something else you should know, Frank continued. I got a call from another customer this morning. Guy named Marcus. He said Catherine's shop did about $6,000 in work on his truck 3 years ago. He's been having problems with the transmission, and he asked another mechanic to look at it. That mechanic said it was never properly serviced, the work was billed but not actually performed. I felt something twist in my stomach. Is he going to report her? He's thinking about it. But he's nervous about family drama. He asked me if I knew anything about her. Said you were her brother and mentioned you might be looking into her practices. How did he know that? Word travels in the mechanic community, Frank said. Nothing stays secret. There's probably at least 3 other people who suspect something's wrong with her billing. That Friday felt surreal. I went to work, sat at my desk, ran spreadsheets, attended a meeting about quarterly projections. My colleague Janet asked if I was okay. Apparently I looked really pale. I told her I'd slept badly. It wasn't a lie. By afternoon, I'd made a decision. I called my dad again. I need to ask you something and I need you to be completely honest with me, I said. Okay, he said cautiously. Has Catherine mentioned anything to you about me stealing from my job? There was a pause that lasted too long. She mentioned something to your mother a few weeks ago, he said finally. Just in passing. Said she'd heard rumors. I told her that sounded like bullshit and she let it drop. Why? Because she called me last night and threatened to convince you and Mom that I've been stealing if I pursue the billing issue with her shop. I heard him take a sharp breath. Jesus Christ. I haven't stolen anything, I said. I need you to know that absolutely. I know you haven't, he said, and his voice had changed. Gone harder. Derek, I need you to tell me everything. The full story. Before this weekend. So I did. I spent the next hour on the phone with him, going through the entire timeline. The overcharges. Frank's inspection. The repair reports. Catherine's escalating messages. The threat. I read him sections of Frank's report. I told him about Marcus and the pattern. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Your mother doesn't know any of this, he asked. Not yet. And Catherine's threatening you to keep it quiet. Yes. He made a sound that was almost a laugh, but not a happy one. She really thought this would work. That threatening you would scare you off. Didn't it? I asked. I mean, it almost did. Did it? He asked pointedly. No, I said. It made me realize this is bigger than just me. There are other people. And I can't let her keep doing this just because I'm scared of family fallout. My dad was quiet again. This is going to hurt, he said. Your mother's going to be devastated. Not just about the fraud, but about Catherine's character. She idolizes your sister, you know that. I know. But you're right, he continued. If Catherine's willing to threaten you, if she's willing to lie to us to protect herself, then we need to know that. Your mother needs to know that. What do you think Mom will do? I asked. I have no idea, he said. I honestly have no idea. But I think you're doing the right thing. And I think you're brave for doing it. That word, brave, hit me harder than expected. I wasn't feeling brave. I was feeling terrified and sick and guilty and angry all at once. But maybe that's what brave felt like. Maybe it wasn't the absence of fear. Maybe it was doing the right thing anyway. Saturday morning, I drove to my parents' house. My dad had told my mom everything. She'd been silent for most of the conversation, he said. Which was somehow worse than yelling would have been. I pulled into the driveway at 10 a.m., and I could see them both waiting at the window. My mom's face was blotchy. My dad's jaw was set. Catherine's car was not in the driveway. I took a breath and went inside. #chunk6. The kitchen smelled like coffee and something my mom had been baking, banana bread, maybe, but it felt like a funeral home. My parents were sitting at the table, and there was a third coffee cup that hadn't been touched. My mom's hands were wrapped around hers like she was trying to extract warmth from it. Hi, I said, which felt impossibly stupid. My mom looked up at me, and I could see she'd been crying. Her eyes were red-rimmed and swollen. She didn't say anything. My dad gestured to the empty chair. I told her everything, he said. Just like we discussed. I sat down. The silence stretched uncomfortably. I waited for my mom to say something, but she just kept staring into her coffee. Mom, I started. I don't understand, she said quietly. I don't understand how she could do this. To you. To her own brother. I know, I said. No, you don't, she said, and there was an edge to her voice now. You know how it feels to be betrayed. But I don't think you understand how it feels to have your child, a child you raised, a child you were so proud of, turn out to be someone capable of this. My dad reached over and put his hand on my mom's arm, but she pulled away slightly. I called her, my mom continued. Before you got here. I asked her if what your father was telling me was true. And do you know what she said? I shook my head. She said you were lying. That you were making this up because you were jealous of her success. That you were trying to destroy her because she makes more money than you do. My mom's voice cracked. She said you were unstable. That she's been worried about your mental health for years. My stomach dropped. That's not. I know, my mom said, holding up a hand. Your father showed me the reports. The mechanic's report. I understand that you're telling the truth. But Derek, she sounded so convinced when she was saying it. She sounded like she actually believed you were the problem. Because she's a liar, I said, more sharply than I intended. A good one. Maybe, my mom said. Or maybe she's convinced herself. Maybe she's reframed this so many times in her head that she actually believes her own story. She finally looked at me directly. That's almost worse, somehow. I can forgive someone who knowingly does wrong. I don't know if I can forgive someone who's so lost that they can't even see it anymore. My dad cleared his throat. I told your mother we need to involve the authorities. Both the licensing board and law enforcement. I already filed a complaint with the state licensing board, I said. And I've been documenting everything. Frank has the inspection report, and he's willing to provide it as evidence. My mom flinched at the word evidence. There's more, my dad said, and I could tell this was new information to both of them. Derek, did you tell your mom about the threat? I hadn't. I'd focused on the fraud itself when I was explaining things to my dad. He'd said he'd tell her, but maybe he'd downplayed it. What threat? My mom asked, suddenly alert. I explained the phone call. Catherine's explicit statement that she could fabricate evidence against me. The calculation of it. The cruelty. When I finished, my mom stood up abruptly and walked to the window. She threatened to lie about you to protect herself, my mom said, not turning around. That's not a mistake, Derek. That's not even a character flaw. That's evil. That's choosing to hurt you intentionally. The word evil hung in the air between us like something physical. I don't think Catherine is evil, I said carefully. I think she made a bad choice. And then when she got caught, she made worse choices to protect that first choice. But evil is. You're defending her, my mom said sharply, turning back to face me. After everything, you're still defending her. I'm trying to be fair, I said. Fair. My mom's voice rose. Derek, she stole $8,000 from you. $8,000 that you worked for. And then she threatened your reputation when you asked her about it. Fair left the building a long time ago. My dad intervened. What we need to focus on right now is what happens next. We need to decide, as a family, how to proceed. I already know how I want to proceed, my mom said. I want her to face consequences. Real consequences. I want her to understand what she's done. That's going to be painful, my dad said quietly. Good, my mom said, and I'd never heard her sound like that before. Not angry exactly, colder than anger. She made her choices. Now she can live with them. My phone buzzed. I ignored it at first, but it buzzed again. And again. 3 texts in quick succession. I pulled it out and felt my blood go cold. All 3 were from Catherine. Asterisk mom just called me. You told them I'm a criminal, asterisk. Asterisk how could you do this to me? Do you have any idea what you've done, asterisk? Asterisk dad's not answering. If you've poisoned them against me, I'm not going to forgive this. I'm never going to forgive this, asterisk. What is it? My dad asked. I showed them the texts. My mom sank back into her chair. She's scared, she said. She realizes this is really happening. She's angry, my dad corrected. She's realizing she's lost control of the narrative. What do I say? I asked. Nothing, my dad said firmly. Don't respond. Anything you say can and will be used against you. If this goes to court, and I think it will, you need to be careful about the record you create. But my mom was staring at the phone like it had betrayed her personally. She raised this girl, she said softly. I taught her values. I taught her that honesty matters. That family matters. And she threw it all away for a few $1,000s. 8,000, I said quietly. And probably more than that with the other customers. My mom's eyes closed. How many others? Frank knows of at least 1. Possibly 3 more. She didn't open her eyes. Oh, Catherine, she whispered. What have you done? My phone buzzed again. I didn't look at it. What time is your appointment with the licensing board? My dad asked. Monday morning at 9 a.m., I said. I'm supposed to submit everything I have, the reports, the billing statements, the documentation of her statements. I'm coming with you, my dad said. Me too, my mom added, opening her eyes. If my daughter is going to burn down her own life, I want to understand exactly how she did it. It wasn't support, exactly. But it was something. #Chunk7. The weekend passed in a weird limbo state. My parents didn't explicitly tell me not to respond to Catherine's texts, but the message was clear enough. By Saturday evening, she'd sent 12 more messages, each one escalating in emotional intensity. I read them once and then muted the conversation. What I didn't expect was for her to show up at my apartment on Sunday morning. I was making breakfast, just eggs and toast, nothing fancy, when I heard the aggressive knocking. Not a normal knock. The kind that says someone's angry and wants you to know it before you even open the door. I looked through the peephole and my stomach clenched. Catherine was standing in the hallway in her work coveralls, which meant she'd come straight from something. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it looked like it was giving her a headache, and her face was blotchy in that specific way it gets when she's been crying angry tears. I didn't open the door. Derek, she called through it. I know you're in there. Your car is in the lot. Open the door. I stood frozen, my hand on the deadbolt. My dad's words echoed in my head, anything you say can and will be used against you. Derek. Another aggressive knock. We need to talk about this. We need to fix this before Monday. That was interesting phrasing. Not, before you ruin my business or, before you destroy my reputation. Before Monday. Like there was still a window of opportunity to prevent me from following through. Go away, Catherine, I said through the door. No. She sounded shocked, like she genuinely hadn't considered that I might refuse to engage. No, we're talking about this. Right now. You're making a huge mistake. I'm done talking to you. You don't get to be done, she said, and I could hear the desperation starting to crack through the anger. Derek, you don't understand what you're doing. These licensing boards don't just slap people on the wrist. They investigate. They audit everything. They could shut down my entire business. Yeah, I said. That's kind of the idea. There was a long pause. I could imagine her out there, trying to recalibrate her strategy. Mom told me you're bringing them to the appointment tomorrow, she said, her voice different now. Softer. More manipulative. Please don't do that. Please. I'll pay you back. All of it. Every penny. We can work something out, but not if you go through with this. You had 2 years to work something out, I said. You had the chance to apologize. To make it right. I was going to, she said, and I could hear that she was actually crying now. I was planning to. I just needed to get through this quarter, and then I was going to pay you back. You told me I was too stupid to understand car repair. I was angry. You threatened to fabricate evidence against me. The silence that followed was deafening. I was scared, she said finally, and her voice was smaller. I was scared and I said horrible things. But I didn't mean any of it. I would never actually. You said it. That's what matters. You said it because you meant it enough to think it, and you're only walking it back now because you got caught. That's not fair, she said. No, it's not. Fair would be if you treated me with basic honesty. Fair would be if you respected the fact that I trusted you. But you stole from me, and then you threatened me, and now you want me to just, what? Pretend it didn't happen. I heard her sink down, literally heard the sound of her sliding down the wall to sit in the hallway. The image of it made my chest hurt, but I held firm. I'll lose everything, she said quietly. My shop. My license. Everything I built. You should have thought about that before you started scamming people. I made mistakes, Derek. People make mistakes. Not like this, I said. This wasn't a mistake. Mistakes are accidents. You deliberately overcharged me. You deliberately billed me for work that wasn't done. You deliberately lied about it when I asked. That's not a mistake. That's fraud. She started crying harder, these ugly, hitching sobs that I could hear through the door. Part of me, a part one hated, wanted to open that door. Wanted to tell her it was going to be okay, that we could figure this out. But that part wasn't the part that mattered right now. I have to do this, I said. You left me no choice. There's always a choice, she sobbed. You're choosing to destroy me. You could choose not to. I chose to trust you. You chose to betray that. This is just me choosing to stop letting you lie about it. She cried for several more minutes. I stood on my side of the door, listening, hating this. Hating her. Hating myself for hating her. The whole thing was a nightmare made flesh. Mom won't forgive me, will she? Catherine finally said, her voice hoarse from crying. I didn't answer. She won't forgive me, she said again, and it sounded like she was talking to herself now. I ruined everything. I ruined it all. You did, I said, because it was true, and I was so tired of trying to soften the truth with her. She was quiet for a long time. So long that I wondered if she'd left. But then she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I hate what I've become, she said. I hate it so much. And despite everything, despite the theft and the lies and the threats, I heard the genuine pain in that statement. The real remorse. But I also knew that genuine pain and genuine remorse weren't the same thing as genuinely understanding what you'd done or genuinely committing to being different. Then change, I said. But you're going to have to do that without me. You're going to have to do it after you face the consequences. She didn't respond. After another minute, I heard her get up. I heard her walk to the elevator, still crying softly. I heard the doors open and close, and then she was gone. I sat back down at my cold eggs and tried to remember what it felt like to have a sister. I couldn't quite get there. #chunk 8. Monday morning arrived gray and cold. I barely slept, spending most of the night staring at the ceiling, running through worst-case scenarios. What if the licensing board didn't take it seriously? What if they said it was a civil matter between family members and refused to investigate? What if Catherine's threats about fabricating evidence against me weren't empty after all? My parents picked me up at 8:15 a.m. My dad drove while my mom sat in the passenger seat, rigidly upright, staring straight ahead. We didn't talk much. There wasn't much left to say. The licensing board office was in a nondescript building downtown, all institutional beige and fluorescent lighting. We checked in at the front desk and were directed to a waiting area with uncomfortable chairs and outdated magazines. I had a folder full of documents, the billing statements, the mechanic's independent assessment, screenshots of our text conversation, the email correspondence, everything. Frank had also provided a written statement detailing the suspicious overcharges he'd noticed, along with contact information for the other customers Catherine had potentially scammed. At 9:03 a.m., a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain called my name. Her nameplate read, Patricia Chen, Senior Investigator. She shook hands with all three of us and led us into a small conference room. A younger man, probably early 30s, sat at the table with a laptop. This is my associate, Marcus, she said. He'll be documenting this conversation. For the next 2 hours, I walked them through everything. I showed them the invoices, explained the discrepancies, detailed the conversation with Frank. I didn't embellish anything. I didn't need to. The numbers told the story themselves. Patricia's expression grew progressively more serious as she reviewed each document. Can you clarify something? She asked, pulling out one of Catherine's invoices. This work, full brake system inspection and replacement, you brought your car in for a simple tire rotation, correct? That's what I asked for, I said. That's what she quoted me for. But the invoice charged me $1,200 for brake work. Patricia exchanged a look with Marcus. And did she explain this discrepancy when you questioned it? She got defensive. She said I didn't understand car repair and that I was too stupid to evaluate whether the work was necessary. My mom made a small sound, not quite a gasp, but close. She'd seen the texts, obviously, but hearing it said out loud was different. I see, Patricia said. She turned to Marcus. That's not a miscommunication. That's a deliberate misrepresentation of services rendered, combined with intimidation when questioned. Agreed, Marcus said, already typing something into his laptop. How many other customers are we talking about? Patricia asked. At least 4 that I know of, I said. Possibly more. Patricia leaned back in her chair. We'll need to launch a full audit of her shop. This goes beyond a simple complaint. If what you're telling me is accurate, and everything here supports it, your sister has been committing systematic fraud. My dad reached over and squeezed my shoulder. What happens now? My mom asked quietly. We'll serve her with a notice to produce all billing records, customer files, work orders, and communications for the past 3 years, Patricia said. We'll interview the other customers you've identified. We'll have an independent mechanic review her work. If our investigation confirms fraud, we'll refer this to the state attorney's office. She'll likely face license suspension at minimum. Criminal charges are also a possibility. Patricia turned back to me. I want to commend you for coming forward with this. It takes courage to report family members. But you did the right thing. People trust their mechanics with their safety and their money. That trust can't be abused. The investigation took 6 weeks. I know because Catherine tried to reach out to me twice more, and both times my dad answered my phone and told her to contact her lawyer. I blocked her number after the second attempt. The story came to a conclusion in mid-November. Frank called me. He'd given the board his contact information as a reference, to let me know that Catherine's shop had been closed pending the investigation results. He'd found another mechanic and seemed oddly satisfied with how things had turned out. Then Patricia Chin called. She didn't do it in person, it was just a phone call, matter-of-fact and professional. The board had completed its investigation. They'd found evidence of fraudulent billing practices affecting at least 7 customers over the past 3 years. The estimated amount stolen was significantly higher than what Catherine had taken from me, nearly $32,000 total. Her mechanic's license had been permanently revoked. The case had been forwarded to the state attorney's office, and Catherine was facing felony fraud charges. She could plead to a lesser charge if she agreed to restitution and a period of probation, but either way, her career as a mechanic was over. Thank you for your patience with this process, Patricia said before hanging up. And again, you did the right thing. I didn't feel victorious. I thought I would, but I didn't. My parents invited me to Thanksgiving dinner. It was the first time we were all going to be in the same house since the licensing board hearing. Catherine wasn't invited. Mom had made that clear to everyone. I showed up at their house carrying a pie I bought from a bakery because I can't bake. Dad opened the door before I could knock. Derek. Good. Come on in. The house smelled like turkey and stuffing and pumpkin. Normal. Safe. The smell of years of family dinners before everything went wrong. My mom hugged me in the kitchen. She held me longer than usual. I'm proud of you, she said. I know that's not what you wanted to hear before, but I am. You held Catherine accountable when nobody else would. That took character. We sat down to eat. The table seemed emptier with Catherine absent. Not in a sad way, just different. There was space where someone used to be. I got a letter from Catherine's lawyer, my dad said, cutting into the turkey. She's agreed to pay full restitution to all 7 customers. Means she'll be paying for years, but it's part of the plea deal. I nodded. I didn't ask about Catherine herself. I didn't want to know if she was okay, if she was struggling, if she regretted it all. That person wasn't my responsibility anymore. How are you doing? My mom asked, studying my face. Really? I thought about it. Honestly? I'm not sure. I don't feel angry anymore. But I don't feel relieved either. I just feel tired. That's normal, my dad said. You did what needed to be done. That doesn't mean it feels good. We ate in comfortable silence for a while. Somewhere in the house, a clock ticked. The kitchen was warm and full of the smells of food and family. Outside the window, the world kept spinning. I had my answer about what happens when you choose to stop letting people lie about who they are. The answer was, you lose them, but you keep yourself. And maybe that's enough.